I've been told all my life that, and you've heard this as well, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I mean, and we love our pictures. We have a phone full of them. We have computers full of them. We like to commemorate our events. And you really can tell a lot by looking at a picture. I mean, maybe that's why Instagram has 160 million followers in the United States, because we're very visual when it comes to like to see what's going on in and around us and with people that we know, particularly because pictures are actually visual storytelling. And it really tells a lot in one picture. You can tell a lot about a place, a person, or even a thing by a picture. And we all know that, and that's why we like them. Unfortunately, sometimes we can draw an incorrect conclusion by a picture that we see based on an assumption that we make, particularly at first glance when we look at someone. Exhibit A, okay? We can make an assumption that maybe isn't correct, and maybe you feel the same way. And sometimes we are prone to say, when we look at someone, well, yeah, I know people like that. Or I've been around people like that. We call it stereotyping or profiling a little bit. And we're all guilty of that sometimes. I want to show you in an example, just a couple of pictures, for example, up here. Over here to my left, you might recognize this guy. Rookie kicker for the Bengals this year, single-handedly. Evan McPherson was a big part of leading the Bengals into the Super Bowl this year with his golden foot at the end of a couple of big playoff games. And what you may not, we look at football players and we think, egomaniacs and all of, what you may not know about him is he is a faithful follower of Christ. He posts devotions all the time, scriptures on his social media. He leads the Bengals as well as other NFL players, those who so choose, in devotional material quite regularly. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm thrilled for the fact that we have some guys like him, especially as young as he is, doing those types of things. Then on the other side over here, on this far end, this kind of looks like the all-American family, a couple little boys, a little girl there, and a father and a mother and husband and wife, and they look like the all-American family. Unfortunately, what you may not know, especially wouldn't be able to tell by first glance, she killed all three of her children. Suffocated those three babies right there. You go over here and you look at this guy on this motorcycle, and maybe you have an idea that you draw from just getting that first glance of this guy. But what you may not know is that James has been a motorcycle minister for years and has led thousands of people across America to Christ through his motorcycle ministry. See? Then you look at this clean-cut dude here, and he looks like somebody's attorney or maybe even an actor or something like that. He's one of the most renowned serial killers that's ever been in America. That's Ted Bundy. So pictures don't always tell the whole story, do they? Sometimes the conclusions that we draw about people isn't what it really is at all. I don't know if you ever find yourself assessing people at first glances or not, or things or situations and through a brief encounter. But here's what I want you to know about where you are today. I want to tell you a little bit about what kind of church you've kind of stumbled into here at Leesburg Christian Church. I realize that all of you are here today for a variety of reasons. Some of you came here because your spouse said, "Get up, we're going to church." Some of you are here because your parents made you come to church. Some of you are here maybe because somebody bribed you to come to church or promised you food afterwards. That's okay too. I don't know why you're here, but here's whatever got you here, I want you to know that we and I am glad that you're here. And I sincerely mean that with everything that's in me. But if you're wondering, and I'm sure you have at times, what it is, what kind of place that you've come to when you come here, what kind of church that we are or what kind of church that we're not, I want to tell you this. We are not that we put up with people like that kind of church, or we're trying to fix people kind of church. That by slapping them on the hands and keeping them in line. We're not the spiritual police of our community. Here's what I want you to know, that when you're here at Leesburg, you are surrounded by a group of people who are struggling just like you are in every aspect, in home and work and finances, kids and family, and all this stuff, your own identity, all that kind of stuff. You're surrounded by people just like you. It's interesting to me that if you and I were able to time travel and go back and just spend about a week with Jesus and hang out with him in his ministry, one of the things that we would quickly discover about that is that the number one question that was asked of Jesus didn't have anything to do with God, it didn't have anything to do with heaven, it didn't have anything to do with hell. The number one question that people asked Jesus was this: why are you hanging out with people like that? Why are you having dinner with them? What is it that causes you to care about those types of people? And then what Jesus would do is he would point to people like you and me, and he would simply say, these are the reasons that I came. These people are the reason that I came. This is why I am here. For you and for me, people like us. So here's what I'm going to do. For the next few weeks, I am going to look at people in the Scripture who are just like us. And even though these stories happened a couple of thousand years ago, what you're going to find out very quickly is that it's the same story. It's your story. It's my story. It's all of our stories that we're dealing with throughout our life. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some people who thought they were making the right decisions or choices. You ever done that? Who thought they were making the right choices and then down the road realize to themselves that they didn't make, and they go, why in the world did I end up here like this? How did this happen? Maybe you've been there. Maybe you are there. Some of the people that we're going to talk about didn't do anything wrong. They had wrong done to them, and they got hurt deeply. Maybe that's where you are today and you find yourself. For some of these people, we're going to see their bodies betray them. We have a lot of that going on right now, don't we? Where we have sickness, and what you're going to see in the case of some of these people, some of them were paralyzed and blind and diseased and bleeding for no apparent reason, and no one or nothing could fix them, and they kind of got to that point where they threw up their hands and they go, what's the use? What's the use? We can't do anything about this. Some of these people just made mistakes, and the people who were supposed to get around them and wrap their arms around them and love them and encourage them actually were the very people who abandoned them in a very important time of need. All these people kind of came to the same place in their life where they ask, and maybe you've been there, maybe you are there, is there any hope? Is there any chance for people like me, a person like me? And that's what I want to look at today and moving forward. Is there any hope or a chance for someone like you and someone like me? Is there any opportunity for you and I to have the quality of life, the peace, the confidence moving forward that Christ came to give us? Well, a couple of thousand years ago, Jesus shows up. We just celebrated this 2 months ago at Christmas time. He shows up and he claimed not only to be the Son of God, but God himself. God was skin on him. Okay? And he did this in order to show us that if God would come, what it would look like to hang out with God. That's why he came, to show us that. And so he did. And he taught us some things, some really important things, some priority things. Like this: I want you to treat other people the way I'm treating you, Jesus said. That's a big one. I just want you to go through life treating other people the way that I'm treating you. And you'll have a lot of success with that one rule. And as a result, they gave him a lot of titles: Messiah, Savior, to mention a couple of those titles. The one who would, and Messiah and Savior means the one who would come and close the gap between man and God, right? This void that had become between man and God, and fix things for us. See, up to when Jesus came, here's what I want you to understand. This is important. Religion was all pretty much the same. You all know this. You've had religious experience in the past, betcha. It's all the same up to a certain point. All religion teaches basically the same thing. I'm here, and God's over there. And my goal is to get from here to there. And what religion does is it fills the gap by saying, if you want to get from here to there, then you do all these things to get to God. That's what all religion does this. I don't care what it is. The problem is when we go down that path, if you've ever done it, and I have, what you find out is you can't ever do enough to get there. The leap is too far. You can't ever be good enough or do enough in order to get from where you are to a holy, holy God. And so you fall short at best in making those efforts. So Jesus shows up and he looks at the condition of religion and he goes, how's that working for you? How's that whole process of trying to get to God on your own working for you? And then he said this. He said, I've got a better idea. He said, what if I come to you? And that's why he came. What if I come to you? So he came, and when Jesus came, oddly enough, it didn't go all that well. And let me tell you why it didn't go all that well. When people are used to a lot of do's and a lot of don'ts in order to try to get to God, they wouldn't care much for Jesus because he debunked all that. He blew it all up out of the water, right? Because they liked religion, they liked rituals, they liked rules. And there's still a lot of people like that today. They will identify with a religion. They will identify, I was just talking to somebody about this before church. They will identify with a religion or a title of a religion and say, I am whatever, right? But they don't practice anything. It's by title or name only. They think that they are in by identification or something like that. And so Jesus came along and he said, he kind of blew all that out of the water. And he goes, it's more than that. It has to do with relationship. And as a result, these religious people had a lot of problems with Jesus. And so the religious people did some things. They trumped up some false accusations against Jesus, found him guilty not of religious crimes, but accused him of insurrection against Rome and political crimes. And they took him outside of the city where they killed everybody, which was basically the city dump. And there they nailed him to a cross on top of this hill we know as Golgotha, place of the skull, Calvary. Now, whenever I was a kid thinking about this scene at Calvary, I only, in my mind, for many years, thought there were only 3 people ever crucified, because that's all I ever saw in a picture. Jesus and 2 thieves, one on each side of him. So I thought that, when in reality, thousands of people were crucified during this time. There were dead bodies hanging everywhere around Jerusalem, all the time, and that was by no accident. That was for a reason. These crosses were kind of like the electric chair, lethal injection, and a firing squad all rolled into one. And they crucified these people on the roads, and they would hang their crimes up on above them so everybody could read them. So as kids would walk to school, or you would go to work, or to your place of farming, or moving your sheep or herds or whatever it was, you would look up and you would be reminded. And something would click in your head. Don't mess with Rome. If you mess with Rome, you end up there. So don't do that. So eventually what people did during this era is they walked around with their head down all the time, just trying to get through the day and stay out of everybody else's way. And so Jesus was crucified. He was crucified, and I don't mean to downplay it, but on an ordinary cross with ordinary criminals, because there were a lot of them, okay? Luke 23:22 reads like this, very interesting. 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out to be with him to be executed. So there they were. The only thing left for them to do was to hurry up and die, right? I mean, that's what you do when you're on a cross. All they had left on their agenda was to wait until death found them, because nobody ever came back off of a cross. Nobody ever came down from a cross. Nobody ever came by and said, have you learned your lesson? Now, if you say you're sorry and we'll promise never to do this again, we're going to let you down off the cross. They didn't do that. It didn't work like that. Only dead people came off crosses, okay? And for them, you got to understand, this was just like daily routine. And so dinner was at 6, right, for these Roman soldiers. And so what they would do, if the people didn't die fairly quickly, they'd walk around with clubs in their hands, and they would break their legs. Because in crucifixion, if you couldn't push up to get your breath, you would eventually suffocate and drown in your own flood. And so they would break their legs so that they couldn't push up anymore, and they would suffocate and die so they could be home for dinner at 6 o'clock, okay? So this is the kind of thing that's going on. Or if that didn't work, they just rammed a spear into your side and you bled out. That was another option. And then after you died, they would either throw you into a hole, or if you were lucky enough to have somebody come and claim your body, they could take it and go do with it and dispose of it however they so chose. So here's Jesus. He's hanging on a cross in close proximity to these two criminals. There was not a praise team over to the side singing Unstoppable God. Don't over-romanticize this, okay? The only sound that you heard there were the screams from the victims and the crying of the family members who were watching their loved ones breathe their last. Now, there was one other sound that was there, I guess. I would be amiss if I didn't mention it. There were some that laughed. Tradition tells us that crucifixion, of course, had to be the worst job in the world, right? I mean, can you imagine? See you later, honey. What are you going to do? Well, we got 20 people to execute today. I can't even imagine. But tradition says that the people who did these executions often drank a lot. I guess so, right? And to pass the time, they would gamble for the good pieces or articles of clothing of the victims, which is in Jesus' case exactly what they did. So at some point, they look up at Jesus in his instance, and they begin to mock him. Do you remember that? They look up at the cross and they begin to mock him a little bit. And they said, some Messiah you are. You saved others. You can't save yourself. Okay, what's the deal here? Oh, that's right. You can't. You can't save yourself. Maybe you should have thought about that before you mess with us as they're swinging the hammers, right? And in the middle of all this that's going on, there's this conversation that breaks out between Jesus and these criminals. And one of the criminals decides to get in on the mocking of Jesus. I want you to hear what he says, verse 39. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? And I can just see him looking at the nails in Jesus' hands. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and save us. Come on, man. What's the deal here, right? Now, I got to tell you, over the years, I have read this hundreds and hundreds of times, and I always thought this was kind of like a stupid, smart-aleck, sarcastic, mean statement until one day I read it and it kind of clicked in my head. I've done a very similar thing from time to time. And I bet you have too. How many times have I said something like, oh, so you're God, right? Then why don't you fix this part of my life? Where are you when I need you? You ever have that thought? Bet you have. Do your job, God. Right? And then he doesn't do it the way we like it for it to be done. And you know what our response is? You want to know why there's thousands of people within a few miles of here, just 10, 15 miles from here, that will not be and never have been in a church house? You want to know why? I'm going to tell you why. It's because they say, that's why I'm not into this God stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. He doesn't do what I need him to do when I need him to do it. So I'm out of it. You can have that Messiah. You can keep him for yourself. But there's another criminal there, and he gives a little bit of a different answer. In verse 40, it says the other criminal rebuked the guy who said that and said, listen, don't you fear God? Since you're under the the same sentence? I mean, we're punished justly. We're getting what our deeds deserve. But this man, Jesus, he's done nothing wrong. So you have one guy cussing Jesus. The other one is saying, man, why don't you shut up? This might be a good time to reevaluate your life strategy here, right? Your plan for success. Because, I mean, what's the next step? Oh, that's right, we die. We die. So now maybe isn't the good time or the appropriate time to be arguing about it. I'm going to make an assumption that some of you watched the Super Bowl along with me this past week. Now, commercials drive me insane. Do they drive you insane? You know what? There's one commercial that drives me nuts. And it's that little girl on AT&T that when she doesn't get the good sucker, she goes, that's not fair. I'm telling you, they must have played that 27 times during the playoffs in Super Bowl. But that's the way a lot of people go through life. Right? That's not fair, God. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. This shouldn't have happened to me. If it weren't for my mom and my dad didn't do this and my spouse hadn't done that. And God, you're not really any help either, because if it weren't for you and if you did your job, I wouldn't be in this mess right now. I wouldn't be in this hole right now. You know, there comes a time in our life where I really think we guys got to stop arguing with God. And with one another, for that matter. I don't know what's happened to you in your past that put you in a bad place or put you on the proverbial cross, but there does come a point where you got to say, you know what, this is where I'm at in life. Now what am I going to do? What am I going to do now? Because you can't change it, you can't fix it, and you've got a decision to make. So this guy says, maybe this isn't the best time to be arguing with the one guy who may be able to help us in this. And I would suggest to you, as your friend this morning, maybe today, in the era in which you and I are living in America right now, this might not be the best time to be arguing with Jesus. The one person who may be able to really help you. So he turns and he looks, and Jesus says this in verse 42. He says to Jesus, remember me. This is an interesting statement. He says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. I know you've read that before, most of you. What do you think that means? Remember me when you come into your kingdom. What do you think that means? I think the week before it could have meant, well, Jesus, don't let me get caught the week before, right? I mean, how many times have you thought that, where you actually asked God to help you sin and to continue to do whatever it is that you wanted to do, even though you knew it wasn't right? Maybe yesterday for the thief, remember me, meant when the gavel comes down tomorrow and they tell me I'm going to die, maybe your prayer was, God, I know that I messed up, but could you just make all the consequences going away? Can you just do your God magic with your wand over my life? Can you make the affair not happen? Can you make my kids not hate me anymore? Can you make the police not, when they come up to the door, not ask me to do a sobriety test tonight? Just make it all go away. But when you find yourself on a cross, I think remember me can only mean one thing, and it's this: I'm done. I cannot fix my life. I deserved something else. I deserve to be here, but Jesus certainly didn't. So whatever you're about to start, Jesus, can I get in on that? Because right now I don't have anything else left. You ever found yourself there? I got nothing. And Jesus' response in verse 43 was this: truly I tell you, today you're going to be with me in paradise. Amazing. No conditions, no community service, no probation officer. No, now you be good from now on and you can, none of that. He didn't say that. You want to know why? Because there wasn't any from now on. From now on, you're dead. And he didn't say, technically, I would like to help you, sir, but last week you could have accepted the plan of salvation and done these 5 things and become a Christian, and I could have done something, but now it's a little too late. He didn't do that either. I want you to understand something about the thief on the cross, by the way, if you haven't figured this out yet. A little deductive reasoning. You cannot be baptized into someone's death if they haven't died yet. Jesus wasn't dead yet. He had the authority to forgive anybody of sins as long as he was alive. Get that? That plan is for us. Wasn't for when he was walking around. So make no mistake about that. But he didn't say any of that. Why did he say, don't worry, you're going to be with me? Because it wasn't like this guy was going to be able to promise to do anything for him back, right? Well, this story, I've thought about this story a lot. This story can hit you pretty hard in a couple of different ways. Number one, for years, you know what this story did for me? It made me mad. It frustrated me. Because I'm thinking to myself, this guy can live like hell his whole life in the last 5 minutes he gets in. When I'm doing everything I'm trying to do to serve God. That's not fair. I want the big sucker. Right? Doesn't seem right. I mean, he gets in and gets the same thing that my saint grandmother got? You're saying that this thief who gets what people who served him all of his life get? No, I'm not saying that. Jesus said that. Okay? To which you say, well, that's not fair. But I'll tell you what, it may not be fair, but here's what it is. It's awesome. I want to tell you something. If you haven't got this, you need to understand this about your journey with Christ and about salvation and about your walk. I want to tell you why it's awesome. You don't want fair when it comes to going to heaven. I know I don't. None of us want to stand before God and say, okay, God, you give me what I've got coming to me. You give that to me. No, I don't want that. I want to stand before God and plead with God to treat me as unfairly as he possibly can. And give me what I certainly do not deserve, because unfair is that God would even pay attention to you, let alone pay for your past. So I want unfair. We call it grace. It's God's grace. We're going to talk about that for the next several weeks. You know who it is, in my experience, and I bet it is for you too. You know who has the biggest trouble or the most conflict with God's grace and understanding the concept of God's grace? It is people who actually still believe that they had something to do with getting their own forgiveness. You ever know anybody like that? It's that do's and don'ts kind of thing. We don't say it, but I think sometimes we're guilty of thinking that God kind of owes us heaven because of all the things, all the money I've gave, all the time I've given, all the services I've been in, right? All that, I've done for them and those. And God, you're kind of lucky to have me on your team. There's a lot of people that go through like that, so you owe me. I want to clear this up for you very specifically. Jesus paid it all and you paid nothing. Jesus paid it all and we paid nothing. We are dead on the table. We are flatlined. We are coded. And God shows up and says, come alive, I forgive you. And all we have to do is just receive it. Just accept it. I don't really get mad or get upset over this grace thing anymore like I did years ago. I'll tell you what I do still struggle with sometimes. I still do struggle with the fact that I can believe that Christ would actually forgive and love someone like me. I do struggle with that sometimes because I feel very undeserving. Maybe you do too. And there's two responses to life if you feel that way. One of them is you can do this, and there's a lot of people in our world doing this today. It's very popular among our young people, by the way. You can close your eyes and you can say, there is no God, there is no God, there is no God. Because if there is a God, then I'm in trouble, so there can't be a God. So there is no God, there is no God. Or you can say, I've messed up so bad to this point that I might as well just keep going and finishing it out because God's got my reservation in hell and I might as well just play it out. There's a lot of people that say stupid things like that. But there's some of us that don't like the close your eyes thing, and there's some of us that don't like what's the use thing. And we come to this point in our life where I call it the thief moment. It's that remember me moment. Maybe you're there today. Where we look over at Jesus and say, you know, Jesus, I can't fix my own problems. I can't fix my life. Can I get in on your deal? The world's pretty messed up. And Jesus says, yeah, you can. I assure you, you can. You know who gets this whole good news thing the most? This is my experience. Who gets the concept of grace best? You know who it is? I mean, for a lot of people, church and God is just kind of a habit, you know, it's just what we do. But for those who really get it, for those who have it click in their head, they're the people who realize that they've been forgiven a whole lot. And how undeserving they really are. I love the story in Luke chapter 7. Read it for yourself later. Jesus is at a religious guy's house, a Pharisee's house, for dinner. And he goes in and they're talking about religious things, because that's what religious people do. And all of a sudden, there's this girl that comes in. We don't know exactly what she looked like. We don't know how old she was, but we know that she didn't have a great reputation. And she sits down at Jesus' feet. She cries all over his feet. She washes his feet with her tears and dries his feet with her hair. And it says that the religious Pharisee thought in his mind, if this guy's a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him right now. But Jesus could read people's thoughts. And so Jesus answered his thought. And he said, you know, his name was Simon, the Pharisee was. He goes, you know, Simon, when I came into your house, you didn't give me the customary water to wash my dirty feet. You didn't anoint my head with oil from being out on the dusty roads. But this woman who's laying down here doing this that you're so appalled by hasn't stopped taking care of me since the time I walked in here. She gets it. And then he said, there was a guy, let me put it this way. Let's say a guy owed a certain fella 500 pieces of silver, and there was another guy that owned the same guy 50 pieces of silver. And the guy who they owed the money to said, out of the kindness of his heart, I'm going to forgive all of your debt. He said, which one do you think would have the greater appreciation? And the guy said, I would imagine the guy who owed him 500 pieces of silver. He said, you answer correctly. He said, that's why this woman gets it. She realizes that she's been forgiven a whole lot. And he said to the woman, get up here and go in faith. Do you realize how much you've been forgiven? When grace sinks in and you realize that you can't fix your life and you can get in on his deal, you get on fire for Jesus. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome you to the church that are of people that are like you, people like us, people who admit that even with God, and I would suggest this is true for everybody in this room, I don't care how long you've been a Christian or if you're not a Christian, everybody in this room is about 5 minutes and one decision away from tanking your life. Even with God, life is hard, but without him, I'm just here to remind you today that life is impossible. Romans 5, 6 through 8, and I close with this, says, at just the right time, while we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will someone die for a righteous person. Even though a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. He didn't just write about it. He didn't just talk about it or sing about it. He did it. He did it. While we were still in our mess, in our hole, on the cross, whatever you want to call it, before we did anything religious, Christ died for us, was buried, came out of the grave, and the same deal that was available back then is the same deal that's available for you and for me today. And it's not fair, but it's awesome. And it's grace. And the question I want to pose to you as I wrap this up is, do you want in on it? Last service, we had a lady who's been attending here for quite some time. Karen Lucky, she came up and she said, I said, What would you like to do today? She said, I just want in. I want in on it. She'd already been a Christian for a long time. She says, I just want to make it official. I want to become part of the church family here. And that's a big deal, because sometimes when life gets tough, you need your people who love you and your family around you to care for you, right? It's a big deal. Doesn't have anything to do with salvation, becoming a member of a church, but it is important for us to identify with a group of people that we can count on to be there during life's most difficult times. Because I look out at you all and I see people who have been through divorces. I've seen people that I've been to court with. I've seen people here that I know that have struggled incredibly financially, and we have together as a church family helped one another, worked through those issues together, supported one another. That's what it's all about. It's extending to one another the same kind of grace that God has given to us as individuals, and loving on each other and helping each other. So maybe if you would like to come today in a moment after we take communion and say, count me in, like Karen did earlier, then you're welcome to do that. But before you do that, before we sing the invitation, I want you to take this little piece of bread, and I just want you to think about how undeserving you and I are that He gave His body for us. And how fortunate we are that when He looked down and saw a gap between us and a holy God that we could not close, He said, I'm going to come and I'm going to do it for you. And He gave Himself up on the cross for you and for me. And through His righteousness, we're made righteous through Him. Father, we just want to thank You at this time and express our heartfelt gratitude for what You've done, what You're doing, what You're going yet to do in our lives, in us and through us and for us. And maybe there's somebody here that needs to think about for the first time that their options really are limited. They find themselves kind of like these guys that were with Jesus that day, and maybe there's somebody here that needs in on your deal. I pray today will be that moment, that hour of when they said, count me in. I want in. Maybe there's others here that just say, I just want to connect with a group of people that feel this way about the grace of God and that promote this kind of love and care for one another that God intended all along. And I've never experienced that, and I'd like to experience that with this group of people. Maybe this is a moment for them to identify. Maybe there's somebody who just wants to come up and pray today. Lord, I don't know what their need is, but I pray that You'll meet it as You always do. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.